So, I mean, this is, yeah, how it works. So, you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, these guys should have been pulled to task over where their loyalties were. You know, in the event of a conflict of interest between the American people and your colleagues in Skull and Bones, where do your loyalties lie? Skull and Bones? Oh, that's okay then. Yeah, they weren't pursued. But that is where the loyalty lies, and that's how the control is kept. And then under Phi Beta Kappa, you have the Shriners. And the Shriners are, we don't have a Shriners equivalent in Western Europe, the Shriners are all 32nd degree Freemasons. And you can spot them. Freemasonry is much more open in the US than it is in Europe. And you spot them because Shriners, when they have their meetings, they all wear the fez. Right? They're all 32nd degree Freemasons. You cannot be a Shriner without. That's the next level in the hierarchy. And then below that, you have the Freemasons. And of course, when I'm talking about the Freemasons, at the next level, it's the 4th to the 31st degree. And then below that, you have the blue degrees. And that's how you're able to do something like Project Manhattan and have 50,000 people involved and nobody knows anything about it. Or you're able to build a stealth bomber and keep it quiet for 20 years. That's how they can do it.
The guy who set up, I think it was the guy who set up We the People, a guy named Harry, came across an act like from 1920, the Government of Ireland Act. This is kind of proof that Freemasons are in Ireland, for, you know, just for people who just go on about secret societies and bullshit. This act specifically pertains to, this part, yeah, 65(1) and 2 specifically says that any laws regarding unlawful or illegal gatherings do not apply to Freemasons or any of the lodges recognised by Freemasons of Ireland. And it also says 65(2) is, I can't remember the exact wording, but any revision of this law or change to it does not affect this section. So 65 is static, even though you won't find it on the Irish statute book, it doesn't matter because 65(2) of the original one said any change is void regarding this little section about regarding Freemasons.
Well, and if the 1922 Free State Constitution was removed in 1937,
What?
I think it was in the 1922 the Free State Constitution, and in the 1937 there was an amendment that was taken out protection of the Freemasons in Ireland.
The one I'm talking about is definitely 1920.
Yeah, well, but it was we had two constitutions in Ireland, the Free State Constitution, and then the one up there, which is 1937. That actually removes the protection of the Freemasons in Ireland. So it's not in it anymore, but yeah, it was in the 20s.
Well, as I'm sure many of you are aware, I mean, there is remarkable similarity between the oaths taken by Freemasons and by the Jesuits. And if you want to read a book about the relationship between the Vatican, and I'll use my words carefully because I should talk about the Vatican rather than the Catholic Church, because, you know, from my research, I'm absolutely of the opinion that there is nothing Christian about the Vatican. You know, there are many good Christians, don't get me wrong, there are many, many good Christians within the Catholic Church. So, you know, I don't want to be confused here. But the Vatican, there is nothing Christian about the Vatican. It is a command and control network. But you have to read the book In God's Name by David Yallop. Yeah. And look at the relationship between the Vatican and called propaganda duo.
There's a famous march in 1917 where the Freemasons marched outside the Vatican and they said, we're going to control you. And after Vatican II in the 1960s, they had a big party. The Freemasons said that they got what they wanted.
Also,
well, this is where life gets very interesting, actually, because, you know, as these guys all work together, whilst they perceive they're pursuing a common agenda, but then in the sort of final run, as it were, that's when things start to get interesting.
Freemason, a friend of mine from the British military told me that Ireland has the most Freemasons per head of population than any other country in the world.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It doesn't mean that they're all, you know, head guys, but
listen, the vast majority of Freemasons are good people. You know, let's you know, we have to avoid the generic observation here. The vast majority of Freemasons are good people. All of the Freemasons who are in the blue degrees, the first, second, and third, have no clue about, you know, what's occurring at the higher levels. And I mean, as I'm sure you appreciate, the Freemason is all about deception. It's all about creating the belief that you're sharing the ultimate secret with somebody, but all the time you're keeping it because you're retaining your power over them. I mean, it's an obscene system. But of course, you know, in of itself, it is again used as a control network. And that's why I am so grateful that, you know, in my youth, nobody ever invited me to be a Freemason. You know, because that is the big problem. It's like Phi Beta Kappa, Skull and Bones. They pull people in at a young age where, you know, the ego says, oh yeah, oh, thanks very much, yeah, I'll come along.
Well, they're having trouble now in Ireland because there's not people aren't that interested, which is why I think that you were speaking of common purpose. You weren't talking there's a kind of organisation in Britain and Ireland.
Yeah. Well, common purpose is actually
basically it's secular Freemason.
It is, absolutely. It is. The reason I was using that description, thank you for reminding me, is that common purpose is an attempt to create a European Phi Beta Kappa, because we don't have anything in that space. You know, we have Freemasonry, but we don't have anything in that space that Phi Beta Kappa occupies in the US. So common purpose, which was set up in the 1980s, it's headed by a lady called Julia Middleton, who's a really interesting piece of work. And it is, I mean, by their own statement, you know, everything they are trying to do is about creating the model for the post-democratic society. And what they're doing is, I mean, they're even going into schools now, and they're asking the schools to identify their best and their brightest, so that they can indoctrinate them in a federalist philosophy.
Future leaders.
Future leaders, absolutely.
Anybody here who wants to see how common purpose works, just look at our, what is known as the HSE, the Health Service Executive. And that's what common purpose.
Well, I heard earlier today that Brian Gerrish is actually going to be giving a talk in Dublin and in Cork at the weekend.
Sunday night in Winds Hotel.
Sunday Night Winds Hotel, there you go. So if you want to know more about common purpose, I would absolutely encourage you to go and listen to Brian Gerrish. Very, very enlightening
We have
individual.
flyers here for anyone's interested.
Okay.
I'd be particularly interested to get yes men along because they don't know fuck all about the treaty.
I know.
That's why they're yes men, you know.
So,
Could I just ask you if you're familiar with the documentary Bloodline about the tomb of Mary Magdalene, and there's Freemasons in it, and they claim they're in contact with the Vatican and that this information is gradually being released, and I was just wondering, is there, because they all pretend they're against each other, you know.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of deliberate disinformation and misinformation on bloodlines. And of course, I mean, you know, Dan Brown has done an amazing job in helping to you know, stimulate that. In my opinion, there is no question that these guys in the inner sanctum absolutely believe that they are part of a pure descendancy. But it has nothing at all to do with anything that's out in the public domain. And if I even touched on it, I would have to go into the full presentation. So I mean, go to my website, and if you really want to see what that bloodline is, then you can either take it as part of the triple set, the Project Zion, or the Hidden Agenda, which I made over 3 years ago now, which looks at the bloodline that these guys believe that they are protecting and that they are descended from. And the point I make is that it doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. That's absolutely what they believe. But the bloodline of Christing is the misinformation.
What was the name of that online version of Protocols and the Elders design that you mentioned last night? I forgot the name.
Theodore Herzl.
You were saying it's kind of like the Protocols and the Elders design.
Oh, the Secret Covenant. Yes, do go Google the Secret Covenant if you haven't looked at it. This document that mysteriously appeared was sent by an anonymous contributor to the Bank Index website a few years ago. And just like, you know, the Protocols of Zion are dismissed as forgeries, just like the report from Iron Mountain is dismissed as a forgery, this 5-page document, the Secret Covenant, I mean, just read it and then reflect on it and look at everything that's happening right now. And you'll see that this document, you know, was extremely prescient. So if it's a forgery, it's a bloody good one.
There's another one, the Oath of Vendita, which is the permanent instruction against the Catholic Church. It's a Masonic, and you know, it's written